The world as we know it is getting smaller. Distant countries, once thought inaccessible, can now be reached in a day. Products and natural resources unique to different parts of the world are now traded globally at an amazing rate. Despite the benefits this provides, increased globalization comes with a hidden danger. The introduction and spread of new pests that severely damage our native ecosystems, residential landscapes, agricultural crops, and possibly human health. Invasive exotic species, which include non-native animals, insects, plants, and disease-causing pathogens like fungi and bacteria, are recognized as one of the top critical threats to our nation's ecosystems. Their consequences are estimated to cost the American public over $130 billion annually. In every ecosystem, native plants and animals, even tiny organisms, provide unique functions that other creatures depend upon for survival. Populations are kept in check and a delicate balance is maintained, but that balance can be severely disrupted with the introduction of just one exotic pest species.
So this stand has quite a bit of privet in it, it looks like.
Even when it is not a pest in its native environment, a species can become an invasive exotic pest when it is suddenly transported to a new ecosystem without its usual natural enemies. Facing little or no resistance, these alien invaders are too often able to outcompete native organisms for habitat and resources, or easily damage or kill vulnerable native plants. Left unchecked, these invasive exotic pests can have devastating economic, aesthetic, and ecological impacts in their new environments. And nowhere is this more evident than in our nation's forests. The American chestnut was one of the most economically valuable and ecologically important trees in the eastern United States. In the early 20th century, an aggressive fungus was accidentally introduced into America's eastern forest. Arriving on infected chestnut material from Asia, this non-native pathogen swept across the country, killing nearly 4 billion chestnut trees. Within a span of just 50 years, the majestic tree was practically eliminated by the chestnut blight, crippling wildlife communities and local economies dependent upon the chestnut. Today, a number of other native trees, including American elms, beeches, butternuts, and dogwoods, are being killed at alarming rates by non-native disease-causing pathogens. Our nation's forests are also under siege by exotic insects. Since its discovery in 2002, the emerald ash borer has killed more than 20 million ash trees in Michigan and surrounding states, and is poised to eliminate this prized timber and shade tree from American forest. This exotic beetle is only one of a large number of foreign insects creating unimaginable damage from our nation's woodlands to our tree-lined communities. Like insects and pathogens, alien plants can become pests as well. Almost 1/3 of Florida's 4,100 plant species are not native to the state. About 130 of these exotic species are invasive pests. Many of these exotic plants were introduced for ornamental or management purposes, but have escaped into the natural environment with unintended consequences. When a natural habitat is overwhelmed by a single exotic invasive plant species, when almost all native vegetation and the wildlife dependent on it is forced out, a monoculture is created. Certain exotic vines like kudzu, air potato, and old world climbing fern form nearly impenetrable mats that completely smother surrounding vegetation. Other invasive plants like kogan grass form dense monocultures that can become flammable fuel for potentially damaging wildfires. One of the most damaging exotic plants in Florida is the melaleuca tree. Native to Australia, melaleuca was introduced into southern Florida in the early 1800s for landscaping and swamp drying. Unfortunately, melaleuca is a very aggressive invader, and in a single year, one melaleuca tree can produce a dense island hammock nearly 600 feet in diameter. Since the early 1900s, it has taken over hundreds of thousands of acres of the unique Florida Everglades ecosystem. Native plant communities such as sawgrass marshes, wet prairies, and aquatic sloughs have been converted into Melaleuca monocultures and thickets. The result is a habitat completely foreign to the native plant and animal communities, posing an extreme threat to the existence of this world-renowned ecological treasure. Throughout history, fire has been an integral part of Florida ecosystems. Fast-burning fires would control the growth of native vegetation and spur the growth of new plants. But the spread of Melaleuca has altered the way fire behaves in South Florida in dangerous ways. The papery bark of Melaleuca quickly carries the fire into the canopy, which burns with intense heat and smoke due to natural oils in the leaves and poses a threat to life and property. Fire also helps perpetuate the spread of Melaleuca. Filling the branches of a mature Melaleuca are tens of thousands of small capsules, each containing hundreds of tiny seeds. When under stress, these capsules open, scattering up to 50 million grain-sized seeds per tree. Efforts to control Melaleuca have involved multiple agencies and a variety of integrated tactics, including mechanical, chemical, and biological control. Because Melaleuca will quickly resprout from cut stumps or roots, herbicide applications applied either aerially or on the ground have been necessary to eradicate Melaleuca in places where it is heavily established. Through years of repeated applications, some areas, like portions of the Big Cypress National Preserve, have been restored from Melaleuca monocultures to diverse native Florida habitat.
Starting about 10 years ago, we removed approximately 2.5 million trees from this area. And you can see the remains of those trees in the stumps here. And that's all that's left. The grasses and other kind of native weedy things are restoring the area naturally. We have a responsibility to address habitats for threatened and endangered species such as Florida panthers, red-cockaded woodpeckers, tree snails, things like that. When we have exotics that invade these areas, they tend to dominate areas, and when they dominate areas, native species just don't have the ability to compete effectively, and they become very scarce. We want to maintain the diversity and native character of areas to maintain these species.
The first concern is to continue monitoring for the seeds that we have in here, that they aren't going to start growing new Melaleuca trees along the
Vast
foundation.
areas of Melaleuca remain untreated, and the expansion of new infestations on private lands may nearly offset the amount removed in control efforts to date.
2,200 seeds per square meter.
The most promising tactic for long-term control of this invasive plant is biological control.
Okay, I see a lot of oxyops damage up here.
In its native Australia, the species is kept in check by a number of natural enemies.
You can just see the kind of feeding damage they cause on the leaves.
Researchers in Florida have imported some of these enemies, including a leaf-feeding weevil and a sap-feeding psyllid, to help fight the spread of Melaleuca.
To be able to introduce a biological control agent, we have to go through a very rigorous and long research process of screening these agents to make sure that not only do they do the damage we want them to do, but that they will only do it on the target pest, the target plant.
Our studies are conducted for 2 or 3 years in the quarantined environment. Our work is scrutinized by outside scientists, both federal and state. By the time we get ready to recommend release, the insect has a very narrow range of plant preference, and we're confident that it will not go over on to other plants.
So there's a lot of psyllids here. I see some weevil damage as well.
Since 1997, biological control agents have been released against Melaleuca in Florida and have reduced the plant's ability to reproduce.
We're seeing fewer and fewer of the seedlings and the small trees. So we're seeing the Melaleuca stands are turning into stands of just mature trees, and that opens up the canopy and shifts the makeup of the forest.
Researchers are confident that the buildup and establishment of these beneficial insects will help minimize the development of new Melaleuca infestations. While dense Melaleuca thickets pose their own threat to the environment, they also serve as a breeding ground for one of the most recent and potentially devastating insects to reach Florida, the lobate laxscale.
This has been infested for about 3 years.
Each no larger than the head of a pin, the hard-shelled lobate laxscale attach themselves in large numbers to small branches of woody plants. Sucking the sap of their victim, the insect kills the branches and often the plant itself. It also secretes a sugary substance that becomes covered by a sooty mold fungus, giving infested plants an unattractive, blackened appearance. Native to India and Sri Lanka, the lobate laxscale was first found in Broward County in 1999. Within 4 years, the insect had spread north to Lake Worth, south to Homestead, and west into the Everglades. Concern exists that this insect will also spread to northern Florida, as well as islands in the Caribbean. One of the most troubling aspects of the lobate laxscale is the number of woody plant species it can attack. It has already infested over 300 species of plants in Florida, including many landscape trees, ornamental shrubs, and fruit trees. Commercially important trees like mango, lychee, and starfruit are particularly vulnerable. One of the most susceptible tree species is the berry-producing wax myrtle.
Wax myrtles are a very common native tree in natural areas, and they're an important source of food for birds, especially migratory birds. So what we're concerned about is that by eliminating a lot of wax myrtles, the lobate laxscale could have an impact on populations of wild birds.
An international team of researchers at the University of Florida is working to evaluate the impacts of lobate laxscale and to develop methods of controlling it.
6 months more, I probably have that kind of data.
Due to its wide distribution, ease of spread, inconspicuous size, and long list of host plants, biological control is believed to be the most promising means of reducing the impact of this pest. Until these natural enemies are discovered, researched, approved, and established, however, lobate laxscale will continue to cause major problems for land managers, landscapers, commercial plant dealers, and fruit growers. Florida's exotic pest problems are not limited to South Florida. On Fort George Island, in the Timaquan Ecological and Historic Preserve, just northeast of Jacksonville, park managers began noticing the unusual death of some red bay trees in late 2004.
This one's been dead for a while, it looks like.
By 2005, dead red bay trees were appearing further and further inland, and by the following summer, 80% of the preserve's monitored red bay trees were dead. The trees are killed by a non-native fungus that spreads through the wood, plugging the flow of water, causing the trees to wilt. This fungus is carried into the tree by the red bay ambrosia beetle. A native of Asia, this beetle is believed to have arrived in the U.S. in untreated wood shipping material.
Native ambrosia beetles typically attack only dead and dying trees, and they're a natural part of replacing those weaker trees in the forest. In contrast, this new red bay ambrosia beetle and its associated fungus are not a natural part of our forests, and it appears that even healthy red bay trees are vulnerable to them. So in areas where this new beetle is becoming established, it seems that nearly all the mature red bays are being wiped out.
While it was first detected in an insect survey trap at a port near Savannah, Georgia in 2002, its connection with extensive red bay deaths was not realized until years later. By that time, it had already become widely established in coastal Georgia and South Carolina and was working its way to Florida. Although red bay is not prized for its timber, it is important to the aesthetics and ecology of many forests and landscapes.
Red bays belong here. They've been here for eons. They're part of this system. When you take that red bay out of the system, we see some potential other problems, and we're not even sure what they are. Birds eat the berries. Will those birds leave? Butterflies need that tree to have their young larval stages. Will they be gone? Will other species drop out without the red bay here? So we're seeing some real changes in what Florida forest should look like and aren't going to anymore.
Beyond the ecological damage to Florida's forest, red bay mortality will also bring economic damage to local communities. Homeowners, neighborhoods, and parks that rely on red bays for shade will face costly tree removal bills for trees killed by the red bay ambrosia beetle and its associated fungus.
Depending on the size and location of the tree removals in urban and residential landscapes can cost hundreds, if not more than $1,000 per tree. So in neighborhoods where red bay makes up an important component of the shade tree canopy, homeowners are facing not only the loss of valuable shade, but a big economic cost as well to have those trees removed.
See if we can.
Concern exists that the red bay ambrosia beetle will not limit its onslaught to red bay trees. The beetle has already spread to the sassafras, a tree closely related to the red bay. In laboratory studies, disease specialists have shown that artificial inoculation with the associated fungus results in the death of seedlings of several other tree species in the same family, including some endangered species. If the beetle is also attracted to avocado, a close relative of the red bay, it could become a major problem for the multi-million-dollar South Florida avocado industry. Florida's beautiful diversity of natural forest communities make our state unique and contribute to our quality of life. Forests contribute over $7 billion annually to Florida's economy, sustain an estimated 30,000 jobs, and provide numerous recreational, aesthetic, and environmental benefits. Exotic pests are currently the most serious threat to the forests of eastern North America and the benefits they provide, as well as to our agricultural crops and livestock. With this much at stake, it is vital to prevent the introduction and establishment of new exotic pests in our nation. The first line of defense against invasive exotic pests is to stop them from crossing over the borders. Because many of these pests are imported unintentionally, it is increasingly important that travelers not bring wood, plants, fruit, vegetables, or illegal animals home from foreign countries. At U.S. ports of entry, government agencies must inspect travelers and enforce regulations to ensure that cargo is pest-free before it is shipped. On the home front, local landscaping should consist primarily of native plants. Nurseries that sell non-native plants should stock only those species that are not identified as invasive by state or local experts, and they should be certain that plants imported from or exported to other areas of the country are pest-free. Every community needs to know and recognize which invasive species in their area are pests and should cooperate when government officials conduct detection surveys for exotic pests around warehouses, ports, natural areas, or neighborhoods. Even after exotic pests become established, the damage they cause can be minimized by preventing or slowing their spread to new areas. Invasive pests can spread by means of clothing, muddy shoes, vehicles, boat hulls, excavators, and other equipment. These items should be cleaned before moving to a new area, especially if they've been someplace where exotic pests are established. Campers should avoid transporting firewood over long distances. Tree-killing exotic insects at various stages of growth can remain undetected inside cut firewood, only to emerge later in a new location and infest new trees.
The resources that we use and enjoy and depend on for day-to-day life come from our forests and our natural ecosystems. So if we don't seriously prevent and address exotic pest introductions, we're really damaging the ecosystems that support us and, in a sense, biting the hand that feeds us.
Invasive exotic species are recognized as one of the top critical threats to our nation's environment for good reasons. These invasive pests can destroy the health of our forest ecosystems, dismantle residential landscapes, and ruin agricultural crops. Every effort should be made to eradicate and manage these invasive pests. While the destruction caused by invasive exotic species is estimated to cost billions of dollars annually, what the American public really loses is priceless.
Florida red bay trees are dying at an alarming rate. They are being attacked by a recently introduced dangerous duo, a symbiotic plant pest and disease. One half of the pair is a tiny non-native insect, the red bay ambrosia beetle, Xyliberus glabratus. The second half is a disease called Laurel wilt that is caused by a fungus, Rafaelia lauricula, which the beetle carries. Symptoms include small holes in the bark, dieback of tree branches, dark sapwood discoloration, and streaking. In dry conditions, the beetles leave strings of sawdust from their wood-boring activity. Unfortunately, there are other host trees susceptible to laurel wilt, including swamp bays, sassafras, pond spice, and one of Florida's most highly prized fruit trees, the avocado. Beetles carrying the fungus bore into wood, depositing the fungus, which infects the sapwood of host trees, restricting the flow of water, causing the leaves to wilt and the trees to die. The red bay ambrosia beetle was first detected in the U.S. near Savannah, Georgia in 2002. Soon after, laurel wilt was identified as the cause of high levels of mortality in red bay trees in South Carolina and Georgia. It was found in Duval County, Florida in 2005 with the same unfortunate result. Beetles harboring the fungus that causes laurel wilt likely arrived in Florida in wood brought from another state. Since its U.S. discovery, the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services and our federal partners, the USDA, have been surveying for signs of the disease. For the past few years, the Cooperative Agricultural Pest Survey, or CAPS program, has been running traps in 8 Florida counties from Pensacola to Miami. More recently, as the disease moved closer to Florida's avocado industry, heightened survey efforts have been underway. Florida Agricultural Statistics reports the avocado industry represents a production value of close to $13 million annually, with over 6,500 production acres in Miami-Dade County and a small amount of acreage in Collier County.
My father bought this grove in the early or mid-1960s. It was a mature grove at that time, so the trees, most of them are probably 50 years old or more.
And Mike, was this the first place that you saw symptoms or suspect symptoms of laurel wilt, or was it another grove?
Trevor, actually it was another grove, but after that, and this thing being on our radar screen like it is now, we started surveying all the groves, and this is just one of the places we found what we felt was a suspect tree.
Okay.
You know, we're looking at our groves, and one of the concerns we have is that as growers is that this isn't going to affect my trees as a commercial grower only. It's going to affect dooryard trees, wild trees, and I think one of the keys to being able to early detect and possibly control this is going to be to get homeowners on board, get them educated in what to look for and what action they can take to help prevent the spread of this beetle.
Right.
And that's going to be, I think, a real key issue in this entire program.
Dooryard avocado trees are also abundant throughout Central and South Florida, and some reports claim they make up 10% of the tree canopy in Miami-Dade County. Recognizing the serious consequences Laurel wilt could have on Florida avocados, the department assembled a working group of agricultural agencies, industry members, and local agriculture groups to establish effective management strategies to mitigate potential impacts. This group continues to plan and implement research, regulatory, and outreach efforts. A multi-agency systematic survey for the red bay ambrosia beetle and Laurel wilt is underway in the commercial avocado groves of Miami-Dade County. The CAPS team has surveyed the majority of the groves and placed 18 additional traps throughout the county. Needless to say, the industry is concerned about the proximity of this disease to their groves.
Is this something you use to help your operators in picking out
we've given
suspicious
them to
trees?
every operator we got driving a tractor up and down the field. They're going to see more trees than we will in a day's time. So these are pictures we've taken of digital camera made prints for everybody.
Okay.
And it's worked fairly well so far. They found several suspect trees and called them in to us. We've gone out to check them.
And this is
the same thing as this tree here. We've told them if they see the symptoms, come up and look at the trunk closely, and they'll see.
So if they see
obvious signs of boring,
wilting branches or brown leaves, to just take a closer look and then look for these sawdust toothpicks.
Are you providing that to other grove owners that grow for you,
Yes.
or that
Yes.
as well as your
several
employees?
owners, competition actually. We've given them to everybody. This is something that's going to affect us all, so the more people that know about it, obviously the better it is for all of us.
And all your picking contractors and all those?
Everybody. And we've had some of the pickers call us up and say, come out here and take a look at it. They could see them boring, signs of boring right there while they were picking in the grove.
They get
That's
the
pretty
closest to the
interesting
tree.
see the sawdust kicking
That's
right
great.
out of the borehole too. But it's worked pretty well. We've had a lot of trees identified through that. So
Fantastic.
Pathologists and entomologists are uncertain of how the beetle and the disease will react in avocado. In the few dooryard avocados where it has been identified, the disease has caused the sudden decline of the trees. As samples come in, scientists are running the full array of tests to analyze the many organisms emerging, including a variety of fungal pathogens and insects. This is a collaborative effort between state, federal, and university scientists. Effective public outreach, vigilant survey and trapping efforts, and continued vigorous research are the keys to managing this challenging pest disease complex. In the meantime, the University of Florida's Institute of Food and Agriculture Sciences has prepared control strategies for commercial and urban avocado growers.
So how do you know the difference between, say, a tree that has been struck by lightning and the wilt?
Yeah, actually it's turned out to be a lot more complicated to be able to walk up to a tree and say, this is a wilt disease, or this is lightning, or this is root rot. So we're building a matrix of different types of symptoms that an avocado tree may show in reaction to either an insect attack or a fungal attack or a root disease or a freezing event or flooding, so that we can start to eliminate all these different symptoms that come with these different stresses, whether they're environmental or caused by a disease or an insect, so that we can start to focus in, okay, here's what a tree looks like when it's being attacked by a fungus that causes a wilt disease versus here's what a tree looks like after a freeze 6 months later.
Florida is in the process of developing regulatory rules to limit the movement of firewood and other unprocessed wood products into and within the state. The public can also help prevent the spread of red bay ambrosia beetle and laurel wilt by following these simple suggestions. Become familiar with the signs of laurel wilt disease and red bay ambrosia beetle, and be on the lookout for evidence of the pest or disease on your trees. Use local firewood only. Do not transport firewood from other states because destructive pests and diseases can hitchhike into Florida on infested firewood. Do not transport host trees unless purchased from a registered nursery. Do not move unprocessed wood products, including mulch and solid wood packing material. Wood-destroying insects could be present. If you are a woodworker, be sure you know the origin of your materials. They could be carrying harmful pests and diseases. If your tree dies, contact your local county extension office for recommended methods of disposal. And be sure to check out the SaveTheGuac.com website. If you suspect your trees may be infected with laurel wilt, or you think you have found a red bay ambrosia beetle, visit www.fl-dpi.com to view photographs of the pest and disease, or contact the DPI helpline at 888-397-1517. Slowing the spread of laurel wilt is the overall goal. Ultimately, the solutions arrived at to mitigate its impact will be science-based from the research currently underway.